Well, thanks again. Again, my name's Keegan Kinslow. I work very, very closely with Greg. Very excited to show you Fire Guys this new B465 Dual Path Communicator. And I actually have Justin Simmons on the line. He's part of our tech support team. He's going to be doing the demo for you guys. Any questions that you guys have, please feel free to let us know. Again, like we said, we're really trying to push this to get a video started for our training purposes. So any questions would be great. Just let us know, and I'm going to turn the ball over to Justin.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I thought I'd just start off with giving you a picture of what we're looking at. So I won't get too much into the hardware of this, but just be aware there's this USB port on the module. That's what we're going to be connecting between our computer and the dialer, the communicator. And then it's got the Ethernet connection there, and then you'd plug in the cellular at the top.
Okay.
So the once you get the USB connection connected between your computer and the communicator, it should come up and tell you that it doesn't have a driver for that. So what you want to do is, and this would be something you do just one time on your computer, and then from then on it should work every time you plug into any B465. So you'd go to our website and go to the products section, go to Intrusion Alarm Systems, and Kinetics Information Transport Solutions, and then Kinetics IP Communicators, and you'd find the B465 communicator listed there. We go to the software downloads tab. There are two things to download there. There's the TerraTerm software and the B465 drivers. So the TerraTerm software is just going to be a console program we're going to use to communicate with the communicator, and the drivers are going to be just so that you can get Windows to recognize it. So I'm
assuming that everything's 32, 64, Windows 7 on out?
Yes. Yeah, it even works all the way up to Windows 10, been tested on there as well.
Okay, great.
All right, so I've already downloaded those files. I've got them in my folder here. So there's the zip files. I've got them extracted out. I've already installed TerraTerm, but that's pretty self-explanatory. You just run the executable installer and just click next through all the prompts, and you're good to go. But the drivers part, I want to make sure that I walk through that. So it should be not recognized by my computer right at the moment, and I'll show you how to get that working. So there are several ways you can get to this. One direct way to do it is just go to the Start menu and type in Device Manager. And that'll bring up the Windows Device Manager. And we can see right here, I've got this other device, unknown device. That is my B465, but Windows just doesn't know it yet. So I'm going to right click on that and choose Update Driver Software. Browse my computer for that file. So I've already selected this before, but it's just pointing it to this same folder for where I've got the drivers for that. So once I've got that selected, hit Next. It'll say, it found it. I'm going to say just always trust Bosch Security Systems and click Install. Give it just a couple of seconds. There we go. So now it's recognized. So now you can see that it's actually showing up as a COM port. And so it just sets up a virtual serial port. And now I can open up the TerraTerm. That's the program we already installed. And you can see it's just a console program. I would go into the setup of the serial port, make sure it's selected for the COM port that's actually being used. Again, if we look at Device Manager, we can see that it's selected as COM5. So in TerraTerm, I have gone to Setup and serial port, make sure I've got COM5 selected. And these are all the default settings for it, so we don't need to change anything there. And now we're ready to go. So I'm just going to hit Enter key one time to just kind of wake up the connection. And it wants a passcode. The passcode's pretty simple. It's just the same as the part number, a capital B465. And we're in. So this is the interface that's used for making all your configuration settings in the B465. So there's one main thing to look at, the numbers 2 and 3 are going to be probably the only places you would go for most installations. The option number 2, standard communication configuration, that's basically assuming that the B465 is going to use the network configuration it comes with out of the box, where it would use DHCP to get its IP addresses, both for cellular and Ethernet. If you plan to use a static IP address for the Ethernet connection, you'd want to go to number 3. But just point those out. I'll go ahead and walk through both of them and show you what's in there. But just be aware that number 2 would be great if you're just using DHCP, and if you are, you'd be done in less than 5 minutes. So I'm just going to go jump right in there. I'm going to hit option number 2, standard communication configuration, and so you can see there's a number next to each one of them. I'm just hitting the number key on my keyboard. So the first one, option number 1, asks what's the account number. Now I just happen to use B465 as my account number just because it's easy for my test system, and hit enter. And you can see now it shows the account number as B465. And then the second option, preferred network technology, I'll press 2. You select whether the primary is going to be over Ethernet or cellular. And so I've got mine for Ethernet for the primary. I'll press 1. And then 3 for the alternate. And so there's only 2 communications available, Ethernet or cellular, so it doesn't need to know what you want to use as the alternate. It just needs to know whether you want the alternate to be available at all. So I want to say yes. I want to use the cellular as my backup, so I'll say Y for yes. And then I needed to go to option number 4, which is primary receiver. I'm just telling it what is the information I need to communicate with that receiver. So I'll say option number 1. I'll put in the port number that's going to be used. And for our systems, it's configurable by the central station, but for almost all circumstances, they use our default of 7700. So I'll just type that in again, 7700, and press enter. And then option number 2, the Ethernet IP address or host name. So you can see I currently have this set up to my receiver on my test network, which I use a host name rather than an IP address. But if you're going to use an IP address instead, you just type that in the way that you would normally type in any IP address. So like 1.123, something like this. And then hit enter. And then option number 3, the Ethernet supervision time. This is just going to be something you'd want to make sure that you match the configuration in the receiver to how you configure this so that they're both expecting the communication to happen at the same rate. So by default, I think this was set for 300 seconds. I have mine set for 90 seconds, but whatever. I can go ahead and change that. Oops. Sorry, I hit the wrong button here. No, don't save them yet. 2, 4, 2. Sorry about that. So 3. Oops. Oh, I gotta type this in again. So if I wanted 300 seconds, I just choose it from the menu there and then hit 5. And then the exact same thing happens with the cellular IP address and supervision time. I can go through it again, but it would be the same. If for some reason it needed to go to a different IP address for cellular than it does for Ethernet, you could put that in here. And then you probably would typically want to have a different supervision time for cellular just to conserve on the data that's being used. So if you have the Ethernet as the primary, you might set it up to poll only every 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes. And then the cellular, you might go 1 hour or 12 hours or whatever the case may be, just so you're using less data there. So that would be the simplest setup right there. If I just hit option 0 to go back, and then option 0 to go back again, it let me know that the settings have changed. Do I want to save them? So I'll press Y for yes. And that could be it. You could just press 9 and exit right now and disconnect and be done. But the only other thing that we haven't done here is set an IP address for the device itself. Now, out of the box, it's configured to use DHCP and automatically get its IP address from the network. So if you could use that, that's fine. we're going to go ahead and assume that you can't use that in this configuration. So I'm going to go to option number 3 for advanced setup, and all these settings for the option number 1 account setup and 2 receiver setup are pretty much the same as what we just did in the other setting, the other screen. I'll just go to them real quick just to see. You can see I pressed option number 1 for account setup, and we can see the account number, preferred, alternate, and the receiver. I won't make any changes here. Then the receiver setup should be the same thing as well. I set up the port number, the IP address, supervision time. There is a couple of other options here: the AES encryption, and whether it's enabled or disabled, and then the encryption key. So if the supervision or if the central station that you're working with wants to use encryption on their connection, then you would need to come in here to this advanced setup. But I'll just skip over that for now. So back without making any changes. And the real reason I came in here, number 3, Ethernet setup. So note that the B465 does support IPv6 configuration, but most places are not actually using that yet, so I'm just going to skip over that. Also, I don't have an IPv6 network available for setup, so I'm just going to go jump straight to option number 2, which is IPv4 configuration. And you can see pretty much the standard options you would have for configuring any kind of a network device. Use option number 1, DHCP auto IP, and I currently have it set to enabled. And just note that the next 3 options have an X there instead of a number. That's just because as long as DHCP is enabled, those other options don't make any sense to include. So I'll go ahead and since we're talking about this like you actually don't have DHCP available, I'll go ahead and choose option number 1 for DHCP enabled, and I'll press in for disabled. And now you can see that options 2, 3, and 4 are available again. So I'll put in 2 for my address, and I'll enter something bogus. So I'm saying that my B465 would have this IP address, and then I'll choose option number 3 for the subnet mask, which by default that would work for the IP address. It would match. You match it with whatever your network admin for the setup has given you. And then the IPv4 gateway, option number 4. And the DNS server IP address. This is not going to be always required. If you're set up to use a static IP address and the IP address that you're reporting to at the receiver side is an IP address and not a host name, it would be okay to completely leave out the DNS server. But if you have one available, if your network administrator has given you one, then you just press option number 5 and enter that. I'll just put in this is a known public DNS server, 8.8.8.8. And if you are also given an alternate DNS server, you could put that in option 6. It'd be exactly the same thing. I'm just going to skip it for now. And then the IPv4 test address, option number 7. That's just what the B465 will use to ping, just to see if it actually has connection out to the internet and make sure that its connection is good. It could be an IP address that's on your local network. It could be the central station's receiver IP address, whatever. It's just going to use that as a ping. We'll just go ahead and leave the default in there, 8.8.8.8, and we should be fine there. And then I'll press 0 to go back. The rest of these options are basically fine left the way they are. In nearly every situation, you wouldn't change them. The module host name would be probably the most likely that somebody might want to change, but that's going to be something that's it's unique to each B465, so it shouldn't be a problem leaving that set the way it is. So I'm going to just assume that we would be the 90% of the setups where we don't need to configure any of those, and I'll press 0 to go back out. And so we were just in option number 3, Ethernet setup. Option number 4, cellular setup, is one that you most likely would never actually go into, because if you're working with one of our cellular devices, it will automatically configure itself with the wireless provider, and you don't need to do anything at all. So in the interest of keeping things simple, I'm just going to skip that one as well. and press 0 to go back out. It's telling me that I've had changes made. Do I want to save them? So I can press yes or Y to exit back out. And at this point, in 99% of your installations, you'd be completely finished right here. You can go ahead and hit option number 9 to exit, go back out, and you're completely done programming this module. So,
Great.
Does anybody have any questions on any of that? Anything you want to see more of or anything like that?
Didn't see configuration of the hard lines, lane lines.
Okay, so this
That's the
doesn't.
bottom right-hand corner of the actual module. It showed like phone line 1, phone line 2.
Yes, that's not actually using those phone lines. That's where you would connect the phone line connector from the panel into there, and that's going to simulate a phone line. So it doesn't ever dial out on those at all. It just accepts a connection from the panel, makes the panel think that it has a real phone line.
So it's not a actual communicator for monitoring if they have only phone lines in the building.
Right. The whole point of this device is to capture, to act like a receiver, capture the signals that are being sent out by the panel and send them over Ethernet instead.
Correct. That's what I do with my security at the house.
Yeah.
It simulates it.
Yep.
Okay. I don't have any questions other than the cellular. That's a pluggable module that plugs into the top.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we just plug right here in this little. It's kind of like a PCI Express port you'd see inside of a computer motherboard. Just slides right in there and clips in, and you're good to go.
Some of the ones that we've used in the past had these humongous antennas that come off of it. Is this required to have it as well, or?
Well, I mean, it has an antenna. Trying to think if there's a good place to find a picture of it. See what we have in here. It's certainly not ginormous. It's about 3 inches tall. Let's see here.
I can dig through the brochure. That's okay. I was just curious about the antenna size.
Just passed a picture. That would be good.
I think I saw a clip of it.
Scrolling too fast.
Yeah, it's not.
There we go. So that's fairly. It's probably not exactly to scale, but that's pretty well to scale with the card and the antenna. That's how they match up. It's not to scale with the panel, but anyway, it's fairly small. It would just be something a lot of the times you'd put it just on top of the enclosure for the panel, or if that doesn't get a good signal there, you might have to run it a little farther somewhere. But yeah, it's fairly unobtrusive.
Okay.
The only thing that I would think is worth mentioning too, guys, is that the 465 is future proof, right? So we are a little bit different than some of the other dialers that are out there as far as cellular goes. So when we 2G is going away, when 3G starts going away, all we'll need to do is plug in a new cell card versus some of those other dialers that will mandate that you have to replace the entire unit.
Update the hardware.
Exactly. Ours is you're just going to change the card.
Okay.
And then other than that, Justin, do you have anything else that you would like to show? The only other thing is maybe points.
Okay. So the B465 also has some onboard points. Just there's 4 regular non-powered points to monitor relay contacts or something like that. That would also be configured inside of this same console window. It's option number 5. You can see there now is input configuration. So you just program how they're supposed to respond. So number 1, input 1, you select whether that's going to generate a fire alarm, fire trouble, whatever. And then these would report in the contact ID format over the IP connection to a Bosch receiver to give you an alarm.
Is this thing listed for fire as a fire alarm panel?
I don't think it's listed as a fire alarm panel standalone. I'm not sure. I think it's supposed to be used, or it's intended to be used as a slave communicator, but I'm not really sure if that's something that would be a problem to just throw it in there if you wanted to only monitor 3 or 4 points you might be able to get away with it.
Yeah, because I get a lot of calls on something instead of putting in like a 5-zone panel, just to have a little 2-zone panel with automatic dial out would be great.
Well, something that just occurred to me is that this isn't going to have any kind of an output to activate sirens and things like that. There are relay outputs, but they're not going to support any kind of supervision or anything. So I would say no, it probably would not be used for a standalone.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any much questions. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I would think that in most circumstances, after you've done 2 or 3 of these, you can have the whole thing programmed in 5 minutes and just fly right through it. So.